Bridging the Gap Between Science and Spirituality, presented by Advaitananda Stoian. Advaitananda Stoian is the Senior Director of the Atman Federation. His background is in quantum physics, but for the last 30 years, he's been teaching meditation, tantra and yoga. He's also the author of the 3-year meditation course, now taught in many countries around the world.
This presentation is regarding the bridge between science and spirituality. And as you will see, hopefully in the end of this very short presentation, it makes sense of the quantum questions of the Who Am I course, everything that is built on this platform by 3 wonderful souls, the founders of the quantum questions that gathered all this around. So first of all, I want to remind you some things. What I will say in the following will be not new, but somehow challenging, so brace yourself. First of all, I want to mention that when we say that we need to bridge the gap between science and spirituality, most of us have already an intuition that this is needed. I heard people from the university talking about this with me. I encountered students in science as well as students in spirituality talking about this fundamental need today to create such a bridge because today we have these rediscovered values about ourselves, about our spirituality. But on the other hand, our master today is science. And let's remember, I don't think we ever heard the phrase, listen to the science, ever as we heard it last year. And we will probably hear it this year, at least in the first part of the year for sure. So therefore, this idea of bridging is fundamental. And I have to say, my background gave me a very privileged position. I was born at the border between East and West. I grew up in a family with a mother that is very mystical and a father who's a mathematician. So practically, since I was a child, I always saw myself as on the verge, on the bridge, in the middle, with one foot on the mystical side and in one foot in science. I studied quantum mechanics, quantum physics, nuclear technology. Then I worked in the Academy of Science for studying artificial intelligence and formal languages. And parallel with it, Tantra, which is one of the most mystical parts of spirituality, and practiced it for 30 years. So, and we all agree there is a gap, but let me remind you a few things about this gap. The gap between science and spirituality appeared when we have exteriorized the attention. See, humanity have been a very interesting place where consciousness met matter in a very harmonious way, but the attention of the human beings was mostly, preponderantly focused inside. And then what we exteriorized outside was great pyramids, temples, amazing artifacts that even today, with the whole science that we know, we can't explain. But when we exteriorized attention, that was the moment when we started to be convinced that pure objectivity exists. Pure objectivity tells us that I can find a solution to a problem that I have outside of me. And how many people today believe that? And then, of course, if I can find a problem that I have, a solution to a problem that I have outside of me, we can institutionalize these finding solutions and call it a government or a system of governance. And of course, then I will be the first one blaming that system because they didn't find solutions to my problems, which is totally unfair for those people who form the governance, because after all, we put there in place being inherently incompetent because they can't be competent to me. They are competent to themselves, but not to me. They will never find a solution to my problems unless I participate directly to that. And I just opened some doors because we don't have enough time for 1 week to go in that direction. But anyway, we started to have two directions. Once we exteriorize our attention, once we get caught more into what is happening outside of us, then what we react to what happens outside of us. So once we started that avenue, there are two directions of action. And I will just mention it briefly. Again, there are two big open doors to talk about, and I always invite you to research in those two directions. First direction is some people started to lock themselves in and then to consider almost fanatically, I underline the word fanatically, that everything comes from above, that we cannot influence in any way the outcome. Therefore, because of that, the quality of our existence, of these people's existence, degenerated. You know, there is even a joke about the person who was caught in a flood, and then he was praying to God, please save me. And then a boat with some people come by and say, hey, jump in the boat. And he said, no, thank you. I pray to God, I wait to be saved. Okay, suit yourself, they say, and they go on. Then military came to save all the people who are left behind, and helicopter come by and they scream at him, hey, jump on the stair, we save you. And he said, yeah, thank you very much, but you know, I already have my savior, so I don't need that. And then this happened repeatedly until he drowns, of course. And then once facing with his creator, the creator is a little bit puzzled, and he say, well, why are you here? And he said, well, obviously you wanted me to be here. You drowned me. And he said, no, I didn't. I sent you a boat. I sent you a helicopter. I sent you all these things. So the point is, but this is, I love this joke because it shows one direction of action. And of course, these people degenerate their quality of living. They can't pay their bills because they wait the bills to be paid from a dove that comes by together with the Holy Spirit and the money to pay the bills. On the other hand, we have another direction of action. All is random in life. All we need is to determine by our soul forces, only we decide the outcome. Therefore, we focus exclusively on the exterior to find exterior solutions to inner problems. Totally inappropriate, obviously, if we think about it, if we focus on it, but however, we don't, because we start already from these premises. Everything is random, there is nothing purposeful in life. Therefore, our attitudes lose direction and, very importantly, any integrity. We have no sense of integrity whatsoever. And therefore, we don't respect basic rules of life. We don't respect life itself. Therefore, even nature today is giving us a feedback. Hey, morons, wake up. I'm here. I'm an intelligent design. I'm the result of a fabulous design of a creator that is very much bigger than you and your outcome. So anyway, all in all, these are the two directions that we can see today. And when we put light into it, we can all agree they exist. And of course, people are caught in between two of these directions, preponderantly believing in the first or the later. Now here, at this point, I want to remind you a saying that was given by a philosopher. It was taken by all kinds of people in all kinds of ways, which goes like this. Science without consciousness is the ruin of the soul. You probably heard about that. Well, I want to point out that here science is what we understand today from science. And consciousness is spirituality. Science without spirituality, we can say, is the ruin of the soul. But on the other hand, I would comment that we can easily add today spirituality without consciousness or without spirituality without science becomes dogma and also ruins the soul. So both of them are true without this bridge. And I want to underline the importance of the bridge because the solution is quite surprising and fair. The split between the two tendencies that I described before become evident by all the differences that we can see. And now I will analyze the differences a little bit in order to underline the obvious solution, which is quite surprisingly right in front of us. The spiritualists, I call them spiritualists, people who embrace the first direction, become poor and unadapted to the rest of the society. They become an isolated enclave. They hide behind the walls of an ashram monastery, behind the walls of a community of faith or belief. In this way, they become a pariah of the society. On the other hand, the materialists become immoral. They become diseased, morally inept. They become intellectually challenged and weak, which is quite obvious today. Countless studies are showing this materialistic tendency destroying something irreversible inside of the human being. We can't even exactly point out what. And of course, the quality of life is falling inside of these people. People get rich and sick in the same time. So therefore, they cannot enjoy the results of science and richness and achievements in the material level. The degree of happiness and fulfillment in the ranks of materialists is decreasing abruptly today. The level of depression, for instance, is higher than ever before in humanity and is spreading especially where materialism is the predominant part of the culture. So all these things are indicating that both tendencies lead exactly as predicted to the ruin of the human being. Now I give you a model of what we call the navigational model. To navigate safely, now of course this is an old model already because it was traditionally said you need a map and a compass. Now you need a map, you need a GPS actually, and that contains map and compass in the same time. So when I say sometimes to people, I have the surprise to say you need the map and the compass, they were asking me, how do you use this? Like, what is that useful for navigation? Which is like, oh my goodness. Yeah, but anyway, I hope if you have a problem with understanding what's a compass and a map, put a question there. I can explain. A GPS, let's say it's a GPS. Now, science lost its compass in time, but have a very good map, you know? And when you draw a map, honestly, all you need is to scan the land, the landscape, step by step. To do what? To touch it, to experience it, to measure it. And you can draw a very accurate map. However, you never know where to put that map on and how to use it, because without a compass, that map is useless. Exactly as many parts of the scientific research today. We study things that are useless, or we give use to things of science that destroy us and goes against our interest. And I will not develop that, but I am finishing an almost 3-volume book of studying the impact of technology upon human development. And the picture is not pretty, to say as a conclusion. Not that it is wrong with us, it's us, we are wrong with it. And always the map is not integrated in the larger picture. Therefore, it's analogically speaking like the solutions that we find from an exclusive scientific background is, the solution that we find is like you try to make a puzzle without knowing the final picture. And then, of course, you put pieces together, but you never know what will be the final picture. And a piece of it could be finished, but always there is a larger picture where you are completely wrong. And this is what we discovered today. We fix one problem and we generate 3 more problems. And that anyone with common sense will agree that is happening in the last 200 years. And of course, to fix that, we need to add something more, the compass. We need to add the final picture, so to speak, in terms of the model of the puzzle. On the other hand, spirituality lost its maps, or spirituality is using old and outdated maps of the universe. It's like we are trying to navigate today with the spaceships, and we are using maps that Magellan was using, or who knows what. And it's like, hey, listen, it's a little bit out of date. You are still using concepts from the 12th century in spirituality today, and they're not updated And I'm not saying updated in the sense of rediscovering the wheel. We will rediscover the wheel to be round as well, but in order to adapt it to our understanding and needs. In time, the quality, and now I will say what happens and how do we reach to the current situation using this model of navigation. So, of course, when you lose the compass, you lose the compass, the quality of maps starts to lower because nobody can check its overall accuracy. So science generates maps, but you know, after a while, science is getting lame. And no later than 2 years ago, a Finnish group, scientific group, published 14 articles in peer review magazines, which are the world governance of science. 14 studies passed the peer review magazines, even received a lot of positive reviews from great professors, and they were totally phony, fake, and joking reviews. And they didn't publish one, they published 14 out of 20. Only 6 were rejected as being wrong, of course, but 14 passed. So yeah, that is the level of this discernment. And of course, they chose the subjects where they knew science have no discernment anymore because it became politicized. So why is that? Is because they realize subconsciously, listen, nobody checks the maps. Even if we do something that is completely wrong, nobody has a compass to check us. Hey, and we can do it. That's the consequence. Lack of rigor. And today we're facing something that is unprecedented, dogmatism in science. Science is starting to follow the footprints of what they replaced centuries ago, like religion was doing when science appeared. Religion tried to suppress science and to censor it. Now science is censoring the people who dare to speak beyond its borders. And this is obvious. You don't need to do research more about that because it's abundant. Now, on the other hand, speaking of spirituality, who is losing its maps, then when you have old maps, the compass is degenerated. And imagine you have a compass whose needle is frozen, it's not moving, it's rusted. But people don't know. If they don't even know the compass has to move, and they just follow the one who holds the compass because he say, look, the north is there, and they follow, and the person move its hand and the compass moved, and they follow the compass, actually the person. And in this way, the person who holds the compass as an object, imagine that situation, is the one holding the truth, the spiritual truth, and therefore is guiding the others. And that is because people cannot check on the map, because should they check on the map, they will say, hey, listen, you say north is there, but now the sun is rising from the other side. So something must be wrong with your indication. And that is the reason why, for instance, today in spirituality, there are a lot of statements. You can achieve this when you do that. But very rarely people check it. Very rarely say, really, let's measure the, if it is true by what we can measure on the body. Because if it is true that I can get enlightened, is enlightened consciousness having some marks on my being? And perhaps, yes, let's measure the marks. Maybe there is some genetic marks. Maybe there is a blood sugar spike. Maybe there is a brain tissue that grows extra. I'm not trying to suggest the answer here, but I'm saying for sure there is. But we have a tendency not to check because the maps are old. Therefore, it's very easy to use a wrong compass. So therefore, having said all this, we can say that the gap is that the science believe erroneously that is meant to lead, to take decisions in the human life. That is one side of the gap. On the other side of the gap, spirituality is believed that is meant to serve the human being. We use spirituality to serve our egoistic purposes, and we put science to lead us. Now that is completely upside down. In reality, the bridge, that was the gap, the bridge is reversing the position, making science and spirituality build and naturally maintain the bridge between them. And in this way, spirituality is meant to lead, not to accept our whims of ego. Spirituality is telling us way beyond our ego, certain universal criteria, like it or not. That's the point. Unfortunately, spirituality today is telling what we like to hear, and science is the supreme authority. Wrong position. On the other hand, therefore, decisions are supposed to be made according to spiritual principles, not according to what we want. On the other hand, science is meant to serve, to organize, and to provide. The decisions are not meant to be its domain. Now, the solution to that, to create this inversion, because I know many will say, wow, that's very convincing. It's quite obvious, everything that I mentioned here. And how to do this inversion. And the solution is quite simple, laying inside of us. All phenomena of leaving their specific role, spirituality and science, come from the root cause. And the root cause is that we lost ourselves from the general picture. Science is supposed to serve me. Spirituality, I'm supposed to follow. I am supposed to follow, not the other way around. But the I have disappeared from the picture. And therefore, science and spirituality became like two objective realities, but they are both generated by our consciousness. They do not exist. You know, nature doesn't follow science. Science follows nature. Spirituality is not inventing God. God is revealing spirituality. So this is what happens when we lose the I, when we lose the only one who can experience the results of all this, or what I call the beneficiary of it, which is I. And you see, that's how it is possible to use science to create a device to destroy ourselves. How? Because we lose ourselves. This is how we can ignore spiritual advices against our interest, because we lost ourselves. We don't feel ourselves anymore. When we are not in touch with ourselves, we are not in touch with our environment, for instance. Therefore, we destroy. When we do not know who we are, we only create dogmas and not real transformation. And you see, because of that, and let me say two phrases that can reprogram your consciousness. Remember, spirituality is not a belief system. Spirituality is not supposed to be believed about. It's never a belief system. Yeah? And science is not a purpose in itself. Science for the sake of science doesn't exist. And spirituality, just that you believe, doesn't exist. You have to try it. You have to practice it. And you see, most of spirituality today is encouraging people to believe. That's the whole thing. You don't believe, you don't have spirituality. On the contrary, you have to. And how do you not believe spirituality? You use science on it. You measure it. Fine. Do you say your meditation is working? Can I measure it? Can I measure its results? Not because I don't believe, it's because I strongly believe in it and I want to underline that it works. So the belief of spirituality is a defense mechanism. When you are afraid you don't have results, you put the problem of faith. On the other hand, science, when it doesn't trust itself, eliminate the spiritual overview. They say, no, we can discover everything. Not true. Now, of course, we make the bridge when we find ourselves, and that is who we are. This is my direct experience. It was leading me naturally to the journey to self-discovery, because I was torn between these two tendencies. This two tendencies I have experienced in myself, in my youth. I have a father who was getting out of his room, reading psychoanalytic texts, presenting mathematical theories, models of quantum mechanics and so on, while we were eating for lunch. So imagine as a child, I was growing that, and my mother being very mystical, and I could see both of them being right and both of them being wrong. And I love them both. So of course, it was never possible to decide who's right and who's wrong. But the more I grew, the more I realized, wait a second, my parents embody the world. My parents embody, they're two exemplary citizens of this planet. And these are the two tendencies we're facing today. So therefore, I was struggling to search a solution for that. And that was the who am I search, because it's not a research, but you can call it a research because I did it systematically under the guidance of my spiritual guide, which I thank God every day that I found the person who could guide my steps, because I realized that my scientific approach would have never been enough. It was always one step shorter. But he was the one giving me the last strike, so to speak, so I can always complete every part of the journey. So the point is that, and this is what is the foundation of this program, the quantum questions that Sam, Greg, and Lucy started it, which is a very beautiful initiative, is actually such a platform to make available for as many people as possible this idea that is practically bridging science and spirituality in a natural way. Finding who we are, we will be able to use science and follow spirituality in a very, very simple way. Only finding who we are is the way we can jump in a quantic way to make a quantum leap to a completely different level of consciousness, where everything is helping us instead of everything is against us. Moving the center of experience from the I, moving the center of experience on the I, upon the I, but not upon I am, I experience, I like this, I dislike that, but just on the I, and training, and I underline the word training, to be able to have the tools to sit in a position of inner balance, straight in the middle of this I, without attaching it to I like it, I don't like it, I see that, I don't see that, and so on. That is where we become the pillar of this bridge between the land of spirituality with all its wonders and the land of science with all its promises. In this way, that's from my direct experience and the experience of many others whom I had the chance to share these amazing discoveries with, and they followed with their own practice. This is a major shift in consciousness, which makes the spiritual path effective, having the effectiveness of scientific method, but the height of a spiritual search. So that is what I wanted to tell you. I hope I was right in time.
If you'd like to know more about the quantum questions, please go to www.thequantumquestions.com.